In a moment, we're going to be writing unit tests for our new user methods. Before we do though, we're going to need to seed our test database with users so that we have some data to work with for our test. So we're going to make up some fake user data for these seed users. Now, rather than manually creating it, let's use a library called Faker, which can easily generate it for us. So we'll begin by installing Faker and saving it as a development dependency. With Faker now installed, let's go ahead and require it at the top of our seed file here. So we'll go const faker equals require faker. And we're also going to need the user model in here as well. So we'll copy the item model and we'll paste that and we'll rename it to user. Alright, next what we're going to do is come down here and create a new variable, seed users, and just like our, I misspelled that, and just like our seed items, we're going to create an array. So let's create our first seed user. So for the ID, we actually want to generate an ID the same way that we did in our seed items. So we're going to go new object ID. Object ID. Now, Faker is going to allow us to generate a variety of random data here by calling the various methods that it supplies. So first we want a name, so let's go ahead and use faker.name, and then it has a first name method. And then we want an email, and this one is faker.internet, not finance, internet, and we use the email method, and that's going to generate a random valid email. And then for the password, we can go faker.internet.password, and I think by default it generates passwords of maybe 8 characters in length, so we can just leave it like that, and that should work. Now we're also going to add a token to the first seed user. So this is a little more complicated, as we're actually going to need to use the JWT sign method here and basically recreate the steps that we do in the user model where we generate a token. So let's first require the JWT library at the top here, JSON Web Token. And while we're at it, we're going to need to get the JWT secret environment variable as well in order to sign the token. So let's go ahead and include .env here. So we want to go require .env, and then we use the config method to tell it the path for the file. So unfortunately that's a little complicated, but you've got to go up 4 directories to the root, and then you can go .env.server, so that should work like that. Coming down to our user now, let's create a token property for it, and we're going to assign to that jwt.sign, and the first argument is the payload, remember, and so for that we want the ID, and what we're going to actually have to do is, since we've defined our ID on the user object here, we're actually going to have to define that above here. So we're going to go const user1id equals, and we'll just grab that from there. Okay, now that we've done that, we can go ahead and assign that there, and we can also pass it in to the payload of the token. Okay, and now the second argument to the sign method is the JWT secret, like that. Oh, and finally, don't forget to call to string there as well. We're going to create a second seed user as well. So this one's going to be much simpler though. In fact, it's going to be exactly the same as the first one, so we're just going to copy this. We're going to paste it. The only difference is we're not going to have a token on this one. So we can just totally get rid of that. but we will need a unique ID for it. So let's go ahead and create another Mongo ID like that, and we can just change that to user 2 ID. Alright, finally the last thing that we need is we need a function that's going to insert these seed users into the database. So this is going to be very similar to the populate items one that we created for the items. So we'll actually just copy that and paste it and rename populate items to populate users, and we'll utilize the user model there and insert many seed users. Okay, with that done, all we need to do now is export those new things that we created. So we're going to go export seed users and export populate users as well. And I think that's all we need to do in this video.